I didn't know who John Africa was, but I remember seeing this man every day, seeing him with dogs, and it was just a compelling thing that drew me to. I called the coordinator, John Africa. And after a while, it was just such familiarity, not even with words, voice, or nothing, that I would look for John Africa. I was married to Delbert, and he lived with me, and we lived a couple of doors down. And we started even conversing about, did you see that man with the dogs today? I said, no, we didn't see him. He had locks, he had dogs following him. And it was just a feeling that compelled us to want to see. That vibration that was coming from the coordinator and John Africa was just pulling us that way. It's like we had no control over that personally ourselves, but that compelling thing that drew us to John Africa. Then one day he walked up to me and said, where's Delbert? And I go in shock, cause we never spoke before. I said, oh, he's not around right now. Do you want me to give him a message? And he said, yeah. And I told Delbert about it. And the feeling I got when he was talking to me and said that was like, I can't even explain it in words, but like a magnet. It was like a magnet that was just drawing me to that. So Delbert came home and went around what we call headquarters and met and talked to John Africa, because he didn't talk to him or know him either. And then he came home that night and he said, you got to go around here. You got to talk to him. You got to talk. Oh my goodness. He just had so much truth in him. You just got to go around there. So then I was like, oh, maybe. But that night in his sleep, Delbert couldn't even sleep. He was like tossing and turning. And I said, what's wrong? Just that day of speaking to John Africa and John Africa giving him all that information, he was so wound up, like just wanting to get it, get more and get me to it, that he couldn't even sleep good. But that's the kind of generation, the kind of solution that John Africa was giving us. And he explained to us that this was later on, because you have to be brought to levels to understand why you was a certain way.
Absolutely.
And John Africa brought us to those levels. It was like Janine was saying, it's just like when you get cut. If you get cut and don't clean that clean that sore is going to cover up and heal, but the poison is still going to be in there. But what it was, because when we had those problems and came to John Africa for that, he opened up the wounds, cleaned it out, and it healed up clean. I mean, we still carry the scars of what was done to us, but it was explained to us why we was like that, why we had the cuts, why we had the burns, and then when it's explained to you, it's so much easier to live your life. Because one of the most important things in my life too, what I felt real scarred about, I felt like people didn't understand me. And that was the worst thing in the world. Like, I'm expressing myself the way that I feel. I mean, let's base it on the scars and stuff that I had, but didn't know I had. But I expressed myself through those different things that I lived. But it's like nobody understood. That's not what I'm saying. That's not why I'm doing that. And that's how I felt. I got so depressed with everything, so misunderstood. I just didn't even want to involve myself into anything. So I became like an introvert. I did. I just backed away from everything, because every time I put myself out there, it was like people didn't understand what I meant, or what I said, or what I felt. So I backed up a whole lot. But that is some of the things that John Africa did for us, like as far as clearing those things up, because like I said, we still carry the scars and remember like everybody else in this system does. But now we are able to deal with it and move on as a healthier, cleaner person, because those scars was cleaned up and we understand why we got them. So you go on with life, but they never leave you. You go on with life And this is what John Africa has did for us and brought us to the level of that understanding, the level of people that's moving in the same direction as John Africa. Understand me. You know, they might say, John, you crazy. But they understand, you know, like the stuff I've been through and why I'm like that. And it's so easy. That's family. That's what John Africa made. You know what I'm saying? That is relation, because, you know, might call each other, you cuckoo, because, you know, something that happened in your past, keeping it light. But we know each other. We know why. And we're moving in the same direction given to us by John Africa. And that is what makes us whole. That is what has those scars cleared up that underneath that are clean now.
You know, being young, like I was with my, he became my husband. He was like the first man that I actually felt like I loved. And I was 15 when I met him. He was 20. And I would hang out with him, but I felt like, you know, cause he had his own place, and I would sit there and I would watch the type of people coming in and out. And I would watch these full-grown women coming in and out. And I'm looking at them like, I can't compete with that. These are women. So when he finally said, you know, let's hook up, I kept saying no. And he was like, why not? I said, listen, I'm 15, you're 20. You have your own place. I see what happens here. I said, I'm not putting myself in that position to get messed up. And I said, because as long as I feel like you're not my boyfriend and I'm not your girlfriend, whatever you do, I feel like it won't affect me as if when I felt like we were supposed to be together. And he no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not. I think the fact that I kept saying no just really made him adamant about it. And so like for a year, he just kept pursuing this. And I did have feelings for him. So finally, he wore me down. Finally, I said, okay, I'll hook up with you. And it seemed like as soon as I said that, not too long after that, that's when I start noticing the change. And I caught him a couple times cheating on me and kept it going.